A few months ago, my wrist started giving me real trouble. The tendon was flaring up and honestly, I was just trying to avoid the pain. I changed the exercises, modified the movements, and did whatever I could to just keep training without it hurting too much. Look, I'm not an expert. I only started getting seriously into calisthenics a few years ago, doing completely different training my whole life. So when this happened, I did what most of you guys try to do. I pushed through it and started training around it. But it wasn't getting better. At 50, I finally had to admit that ignoring it wasn't tough. It was actually pretty stupid. So instead of just resting and hoping that it would magically disappear, I decided to change how I train. Here's exactly what I ended up doing differently. First, I cut way back in anything that loaded my wrists heavily. No more high volume pushing days and no more wrist flexion. Second, I went and saw a hand therapist. She told me to stop tightly strapping the wrist and instead of using this little widget for support instead so the bone can actually move. That was a real eye-opener for me and actually quite helpful. Third, wrist prep is now non-negotiable. Every session starts with 8 minutes of mobility and gradually loading the wrists. I used to skip this stuff, but now I don't skip it at all. Fourth, I shifted more of my training towards pulling and stability work that doesn't aggravate the tendons. So using rings, controlled negatives, scapular stuff, that kind of thing. And fifth, I started being really strict about the 80% rule. If the speed or form starts to break down, the set is done. No grinding through it, no pushing through the discomfort, no pumping out the last rep. The biggest change wasn't really the exercises, it was the mindset. I stopped asking, how hard can I push today? And I started asking, how consistently can I train for the next 5 years? The new goal was not to get the skill as quickly as possible, but to remain injury-free along the way. So the hardest part wasn't cutting back on pressing, it was accepting that slowing down was actually the smarter move. At 50, these nagging injuries aren't just bad luck, they're a feedback loop. They show exactly where your foundation is weak. I'm not fully healed yet, but my wrists already feel stronger and more resilient than they did before. And that's because I finally stopped ignoring the signals and asked for some professional help. Sometimes the best way forward is to take a sidestep and fix the basics first. If you're dealing with a nagging injury right now, don't just rest and hope it goes away. Audit it, audit it. Change the process and don't be afraid to ask for help. If you've had to modify your training because of an injury, drop the word reset in the comments below. I read every single one and I'll see you in the next one.